All right. So this is the Easthampton Affordable and Fair Housing Partnership. It is Wednesday, November 17th, and it is 6:35 p.m. Hi, everyone. Before we keep talking about this application, I did want to welcome Shira to our group. Yeah. And so we can all, it'd be great for Shira if you want to introduce yourself, but also we can just go around and also introduce ourselves. So I'm Jana Tatro. I'm the chair. I've been on the housing partnership for almost as long as Jackie, but Jackie beats me by several years. I'll pass it to Brad or Jackie, whoever wants to go next.
Go ahead, Jackie.
You said my name, so I just took that as a... Hi, Shira. I'm Jackie. Yes, I'm a founding member of the Easthampton Housing Partnership, and before that, the city had a housing committee that was part of the Economic Development and Industry Committee. And so, yes, going back a long, like 15 years probably, I've been part of affordable housing thinking in the city in one way or another. But I work at UMass as my day job, so used to work in the housing world. I don't anymore. And now I'll kick it to Brad, and I'll shut up.
Hey, so yeah, I've been on the partnership now. This is my second year. So I come from a nonprofit background, transitional housing for survivors of sexual and domestic violence, LGBTQ youth, all different groups. Yeah. Oh, and also I'm a graduate student at UMass. I'm finishing up my master's in public policy. So yeah. Just go ahead, Jamie.
So I'm the assistant planner with the city, and I've been working with housing partnerships since maybe beginning of 2018, let's say. But I've been working with the city since 2012. And I try to help bring support to the housing partnership, and help coordinate your activities with the city administration, of which Brad is now a part, or will be a part soon.
Oh yeah. So I buried the lead. Yeah. And then also starting in January, I'll be on city council. So yeah.
And no longer with us, right?
Until the end of my term, which I think ends in December of 2022.
Oh, I thought it was December 2021. Okay.
Yeah, I just can't be reappointed. That's all.
Excellent. Kate?
I'll introduce myself, and I just realized I think I have to get my appointment paperwork back. Thanks for the reminder. So I'm Kate. I don't remember when I joined the partnership, maybe a year or two ago. I work for the Department of Mental Health, and I used to do stuff with the housing court and low-income property management. And we're excited to have someone new, by the way. So if we're not like being enthusiastic, if we're playing it chill, like it's not chill, we're really excited to have you here. So not that many people want to join our group. So when someone does, we're like, yes.
I will say that Kate is everyone's underselling themselves, I will say, because they're all experts in their field. Kate used to run a low-income housing search workshop that I have stolen many times and redo for my staff at work because it was so good. And she was highly coveted when she worked at the court system at the Franklin County Court Center. So I will say I've been doing affordable housing work for a long time. I used to do it professionally. I now work at Community Action Pioneer Valley. So I do it sort of tangentially. We do some housing stuff, but I also do lots of other anti-poverty stuff. So I'll pass it to Shira. We'd love to hear about you and why you want to be with us.
Well, so I'm Shira, and I've lived in Easthampton since 2006. I decided to get a month-to-month apartment in 2006 rather than go for the one-year lease because I wasn't sure I was going to stay. And then I stayed in that month-to-month apartment for 10 years. So, so then I decided, Easthampton is my home. I bought a property in town, and then my husband and I 3 years ago, bought a house together. So in that time, I had always wanted to be more involved in Easthampton, like, local community in any way. So recently I was just kind of looking over the website and it says like vacancies, and I was like, housing, awesome. So I've been teaching adult basic education to adults who did not achieve their high school diploma, helping them to achieve their equivalency, which is like a GED, but that's a brand name. So I've been doing that for about 6 years now. And so I've had a lot of communication with, places like Wayfinders, or formerly HAP Housing. So I was involved a little bit in the housing aspect, but from a teacher student, kind of like a guidance counselor, maybe okay, let me help you navigate this system, and you should go to Wayfinders and do this. And as a landlord, I always wanted to be open and available to anyone with any sort of voucher as well, because I found from being on that side of it, it's really hard for many people to obtain the housing they need. So I always wanted to be the type of landlord that would accept. I mean, legally, every landlord's obligated to, as you know, but they don't always do it. So coming from kind of that angle. So I don't have quite the same background as any of you, but I'm really excited, though. I'm really excited to bring what I can to Easthampton.
We're excited to have you. And I will say, just stop us at any time if we are talking too fast about things that you have questions about. There's a lot of acronyms in affordable housing.
There's a lot of acronyms in those minutes, and I was like, I'll just email later and ask. And so I have notes going.
Okay, good. Yes, there's lots of acronyms, but always just stop us, because we will do our best going forward to not speak in acronyms, so that we can make sure everyone understands.
And I have to say, it's always great, I think, to have someone join a partnership who sees it from the side of folks who need affordable housing and know what the hurdles are to getting into fair and affordable housing. So yeah, I think that this sounds like a great fit. So welcome.
Shira, can I just ask you one more question? I know we've got an agenda, and I have to announce I have 7:30 is kid bedtime, and I got to go by then. But did you say that you're a landlord? Are you a small landlord and you're renting out something?
Yes.
So that's another really exciting thing to have on this team.
Okay, I thought you were going to say I couldn't be here or something.
That's fabulous, right? That's exciting too. So I just wanted to make sure
so I own the property at it's 57 Northampton Street. It's on the way to Tasty Top, on the right, from the Rotary to Tasty Top. It's on the right. It's a
Cool.
2-family brick building with the big blue dumpster,
Okay.
which I've clearly said many times before. So if you drive by, be like, oh, that's Shira's place. And it's a nice little 2-family. And one of my tenants is there on a voucher. Her first, last, and security Wayfinders covered, and they covered her first 3 months, which was really cool. And now she pays in full, but she had that. And I was like, this is great, because she had so many terrible things happen to her at one time. So I was glad. And she's been there, and it's been 6 years now. So.
No, it's exciting for us, because then we can also have a landlord perspective. And again, there's big landlords, little landlords. So I just wanted to clarify. Thanks.
Great. So we do have an agenda, but what's not on the agenda is that we were accepted today into CHAPA's Municipal Engagement Initiative program. So we applied for this last month. And the purpose of the Municipal Engagement Initiative is to help communities that want to build coalitions around affordable housing. So this has been a goal of the Housing Partnership for a long time. And we had investigated this program over the summer and talked to the folks at CHAPA, which stands for Citizens Housing and Planning Association. And they're a statewide advocacy organization around affordable housing. And so then the application round opened and we were super excited to apply. And I got a call. So the housing partnership applied with support from the city. So we had a support letter from the planning office and a support letter from the mayor's office. And so I got a call today from Dana Lewinter, who's their director of municipal engagement, to let us know that we were accepted. And so they had 21 applications and they accepted 7 communities, 3 for their sort of full program, which is like, I think, of more hands-on technical assistance. We were accepted for the light program. We had indicated that we would take either in the application. I suspected that if we got accepted, we'd probably get accepted for light just because Easthampton's been pretty successful and we have a pretty strong group of folks. And so we were hoping for the full because I think we thought the light was going to be more work. But I'm really excited. And so our next steps on that, just to give everybody a heads up, is so that Jeff, Jamie, and I are going to have a Zoom with Dana and her team the week after Thanksgiving, just to get an idea of like what's next. And so like basically what the process is, what the timeline is, what to expect. They are going to issue a press release by the end of the week announcing the communities that were selected. They want to make sure that all the communities are okay with being in the press release. So they have some communities that are worried that there'll be like too much backlash from the press release. So I said we were meeting tonight and we could talk about it tonight. I thought that Easthampton, like city officials and city leadership, would be pretty excited about the press release and not want us to not be in the press release. But I said I would double check. And yeah, that's kind of all I know. So Dana did share with me who was accepted, but I promised I wouldn't say, but it's mostly what I would consider, quite frankly, Greater Boston. She was like, well, we don't consider this town Greater Boston. And I was like, okay, it's like 15 miles outside of Boston. So I'm psyched. I think it's really exciting. I mean, I will disclose that I used to work at Chappa, but so I'm excited that they chose a diverse group of communities and didn't just choose only communities within basically 128 from looking at the list that she gave me. It's like everybody within 95 except for us and one other group. So it's great. I'm super excited. But I don't really know anything else. And so I'm hoping that after we meet with them, that I'll have an idea of like what the light program means, what we're going to be expected to do, what they're going to be looking for from us, what the timeline will be. So congrats to all of us, because I think it's a great step forward and something we've been working toward. Okay, so the agenda, where's my agenda? So we need to approve the October meeting minutes. So I had to do the October meeting minutes. I could not find the recording of the meeting anywhere on Easthampton Media. So if I missed anything or misrepresented anything, please let me know, because I waited until like 2 days ago to type them and that was a mistake. Does anyone have any edits for the October meeting minutes? Did anyone read them?
I'm reviewing them now.
Okay. Did anyone do you all need a minute? I know I sent them late because I usually send them a week in advance. Usually Brad does them and he sends them to me right after the meeting.
It's a part of being a real-time transcriptionist for 6 years. So I wasn't at the meeting, so I don't have any input one way or the other. So I'm just going to vote to abstain, I guess, or to recuse myself from it, because I can't say one way or another what actually was talked about.
Okay.
I did read through it in my usual very deep way, and I can. Jackie, do you want another minute to look through it?
I think it's fine. I just,
I make a motion to
it looks
approve
good.
the October meeting minutes.
Say that again. Did she just make a motion?
I made a
to
motion
approve? Okay,
to approve
second.
the October minutes.
I will second that.
Okay. So we have to do a roll call. So I'm Jana.
Jackie, I.
Do I have to vote for my own motion?
Yeah.
Yes.
Kate, aye.
Okay. And Brad and Shira, you will abstain?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Great. Approved. Thank you. Oh, it's like so complicated. All right. So really the only other big thing on our agenda is to talk about ARPA and the housing production plan, which I will admit I did not do any preparation for. So I know this was something that Kate wanted to talk about. Jess, who is a guest and doesn't.
Sorry, the ARPA, I was like, what is ARPA? Sorry, I've never heard it called. Is that what people call it? Is that the language? ARPA?
American Rescue Plan,
Yeah.
Rescue Plan Act.
I've only seen it
Yes.
written. I was like, what's ARPA? Okay, got it.
So ARPA is the federal money that is part of Biden's American Rescue Plan Act that lots of cities and towns are getting a piece of. Easthampton is getting somewhere around $5 million, we think, right? It can be used for a variety of things, including housing. In previous meetings, we have discussed that the mayor has already issued her list of priority items for the funds that are primarily things that are already happening. So there's not necessarily anything new. Last meeting, we talked about, even though that is the case, that we would look at our housing production plan and think about whether or not there were items that we wanted to bring forward to the mayor and city council to say, well, we also think you should think about this thing, and we think it's an eligible use of ARPA, and please consider it. So that's where we are.
So I'm going to pull up our housing production plan.
I was about to do the same thing.
And that way we can maybe share some of the goals in there that we want to think about as priorities. It always helps to look at it, right?
Would it be helpful if I share that on the screen, or do people?
Yeah, I think so. Or you could just can other people share?
Right now, anyone who's a co-host can share. So Jackie, you're a co-host. Jenna, you're a co-host.
If you guys also have it at your fingertips, do you mind just?
Yeah, I have it.
Okay.
I'm just scrolling to the
I have the
appropriate
first draft, but
page.
it's the old one, and I think we should have the more new one.
Yeah. So I'm scrolling to the appropriate page. So just give me a sec.
Thanks.
Okay, Jana,
All right.
can I just, as a reminder, it's not just the local funds, but there's state money that's coming, boatloads of it. And a Senate bill just passed last week with priorities, a lot of them for housing. And so I think it may be wise for the partnership to sort of look at what the Senate bill priorities are for housing and see how that may line up with what's in the housing production plan, because there may be grant opportunities coming down the pike.
Money,
Okay.
like, can you say more about that, Jess? Like money coming to who, and like if there was a grant opportunity, who would apply for it?
Like through DHCD?
Yeah, so there's money coming to CDAC, to DHCD, to Mass Housing, to a bunch of different, for home ownership, first-time home buyer programs. I mean, there's things that are earmarked specifically in the Senate bill for specific housing programs, and probably a quick Google search would bring up at least a quick list of housing programs. I'm sure you could find it pretty easily, or I could find it and stick a link in the chat for you.
Looking at Chapa has a thing about Senate ARPA amendments on their website.
And there's certain legislators that are putting earmarks forward specifically for specific agencies, for specific projects. So I think that my recommendation would be to focus on what is coming down the pike from the state, because the last numbers that we heard was around 600 million for housing specifically out of the state ARPA bill. So that's a lot of money. That's kind of be like a one-time infusion to cities and towns. And specifically with having that much money earmarked specific for housing, affordable housing, first-time home buyer programs, it may be a good opportunity to just be aligned with what's coming from the state and just make sure it's consistent with what's in your plan and maybe prioritize that. I don't know. My recommendation.
Okay. I think that's fair. So I put a link in the chat to the housing production plan. If I'll share my screen too, but if folks want to scroll, like pull it up yourselves and scroll through, it's pages 61 through 63 are that's the action plan summary. But I think Jess is probably right. It might make sense to read it with an eye toward what ARPA funds are going to be used for at the state level. So if somebody wants to, so CHAPA has that on their website, you think, Jana?
Yeah, so on CHAPA's website, under they have like their, where am I? Like their
Legislative
housing
priorities.
Yeah, their priorities.
Got
And so
it.
they have a thing on Senate ARPA amendment. So it talks about like $12.4 million to provide housing stability and homelessness prevention, $25
Anna, will
million.
Just put the link in
Yep.
the chat box. Just so, because I think we won't be able to visually do both, but maybe
No.
what I'm going to do is have CHAPA up while we look through this.
So, yeah, I just did the same thing. The only issue, actually, here's one that links to all of them. The only thing, so there's the most recent thing is a comparison of House and Senate ARPA spending proposals.
Oh, that's no.
Right. And so the other one's like, one is a Senate one. I mean, it's going to depend on what they end up, right, coming up with it in the end. So
Right.
unless I'm missing something.
But Jackie, what if I think what we could do though, I mean, I don't think we have to have the detail. I mean, we could look at, you know how it's right now,
Yep.
I'm looking at it under,
Actually,
it's
here,
broad.
look at
Yeah, like
this one right
housing and
here.
eviction, right. Oh, that's a good
So
one
these-
too.
Yeah, so these are things that they're talking about, apparently. So this is pretty broad, though, right? Homeownership assistance, homeownership production, rental production, supportive housing, public housing, green energy retrofitting, which it doesn't look like that's in the House, but so these appear to be the priorities anyway, right? Again, just put another one in the chat as well.
Okay, let me look at the chat.
Okay. So if we just sort of pull, so homeownership, assistance, and production. Jana, do you read homeownership assistance as what Valley CDC is proposing to do, which is helping people get into their first homes as opposed to homeownership production? Do you see on this where I've shared it,
Yeah.
like
So if
those
I'm
two
looking
things?
at the, yeah, I mean, these are so hard to read. I'm looking at if I look at the Senate one, they say first-time homebuyer assistance expands homeownership assistance to include debt reduction programs.
Okay, so that is like down payment assistance.
I guess, yeah.
Potentially. Or that, I mean, that does accomplish that. All right. It's too bad there's not more for home ownership production, but we don't know yet what that's going to look like. Rental production, supportive housing, that's good. Public housing. Okay, so those are pretty broad categories. And then we have here, this is our table of actions and implementations, and they're prioritized, and then kind of who's responsible for each of them. So we can kind of go through this and see what folks might find helpful to kind of pull out. The only problem is I'm trying to do minutes too, so. But do you all want to kind of go through this list?
So one other thought that I have, I mean, these are very, very specific, and
Right.
Jess, I don't know, I'm sure you might be doing a couple things, so I just want to key your ear on this too. When I'm looking at the chat, I'd love some money to help us, and maybe we could do this as a priority. I think we need an expert, we need an attorney, or we need someone to help us with the zoning stuff. It's something that I'm blanking on her name, was talking about the
Our
Barrett group.
consultant.
Yeah, and I'm putting it out there to see if we can find something, but when I'm looking at CHAPA, but it is along the lines of, so I don't think we're going to know everything, but since there is the priority for development of affordable housing, I don't know if that would go in there, but I just want to throw it out there that I like the priority on CHAPA. So I should say
Yeah,
CHAPA
back
has
up,
its priority for the development of affordable housing, or the state money has that. And I wonder if we can, so I have a question about how that should be with our priorities, but also if there's a way that we can, I don't know, because I think if we could hire a consultant to help us rezone.
I think the zoning is not really our purview, right, Jamie?
Yeah, I was going to say that I think also a big push of, everything that I've heard is that all of this ARPA funds are for projects that are shovel ready or things that are going to be built or constructed, and it's less about the planning and design side of things. So I'd be happy to be proved wrong, but I don't know if the ARPA funds would be for zoning updates. And as Jackie said, we are the planning board and the city council ordinance subcommittee are typically the ones that are doing zoning. The planning department's always obviously involved. The housing partnership can be involved too, but there might be other things that housing partnership would tackle that are more solely in the housing partnership's court.
Fair enough.
One thing that seems like sort of tangible, maybe, so like if you think about One Ferry Street, right? So one of the things that we mentioned when we applied for CHAPA's program was that because we didn't have this big broad coalition to push the owner of One Ferry Street to include affordable housing, it didn't happen, right? Like we asked, he was kind of waffly, and then in the end, like he sort of made some commitments and then kind of like it's doing whatever he's doing. But if there was more fun, I think for him, it's just too complicated, right? So it's too hard for him to figure it out. So if there was money available that he could apply for that would provide some affordable housing in that project that is already happening, that could be something that seems tied to some of these ARPA priorities, right? That expanding, affordable rental housing production provides an additional $75 million to build new affordable rental housing. So, that's a project, that could happen in multiple places in Easthampton, but I'm just thinking that's a project that's actually happening, even though it doesn't currently include affordable housing.
Maybe that's a thing that's on our radar as this next, either the round of ARPA funding becomes available to the mayor and she's prioritizing it, or there's stuff that folks can apply for, is specifically One Ferry Street as a project that could use some money and support to put affordable rental units in it. Right?
That's just an idea. I don't know how realistic it is, but.
Well, I think it's something we could put on our list anyway.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. Is there anything else? So I wanted to scroll to the next couple of pages because this is just the first one. Is there anything on this page here that we want to think about as something that feels like it could, with all of the kind of parameters that we just talked about, where, is it going to be something shovel ready? Is it actually going to produce housing units? It seems to me that if housing assistance is one of them, then, more money for an organization like Valley CDC to work with homeowners to help them get prepared to buy houses. So that feels like a project that could be supported. And maybe the ARPA funds would mean, CPA funds we have to use for folks at or below 100% of AMI. Maybe with ARPA funds, we can boost that up a little bit. I don't know what the rules are, so stop me if I'm going down the wrong track, but That's the gap. That's where people are really struggling to be able to buy houses are, above between 100 and 125% of AMI, right? Jana, I'm looking at you.
Yeah, and I think, another thing on this list is expanding access to affordable homeownership provides $300 million to resources to expand first-time home buyers. And we've heard that sort of loud and clear in other public hearings, right? That when rental housing is permitted, people say, well, how come you're not building homeownership? Why can't we have affordable homeownership? And it's because there's no money for it. There's no way to support it. So I think that's another area. You're right.
May I just ask, and I've already actually jumped to the second page. I still like your idea, Jenna, about the One Ferry Street. To build on that, what's the time frame for I think it's probably too far off the schools. I think we'd probably miss the school.
Why do you think? Say more about that, Kate. What are you thinking about?
Well, just something similar. I'm just looking. I think I might have jumped to the second page too. That one of our things is, that we want a good RFP for the schools, but I'm just wondering if there's a way that we could also, if we don't go with like a Valley CDC, then we'd be going with someone more like One Ferry Street. And how can we ensure that there's some affordable housing there? And I don't have anything specific, but
you tie ARPA funding to a specific number of affordable units.
Right. That's what I'm saying.
But I guess I'm still confused about the state ARPA money because it's not coming to the city, right? It's going to all these other, so like a developer would have to apply to the state to get access to these funds. So I feel like we can't say.
I think you're right. Yeah, I think you're right.
But Brad Brad might have some thoughts about this because he was just at the school reuse committee. But we're hoping, right, that the RFP is going to have some type of priority for some affordable housing.
Yeah. We're honestly looking at having affordable housing units be a requirement. It needs to be there somewhere, whether it's one whole building or, like mixed use where there's like commercial space on the first floor and residential on the second and third floor, whatever that looks like. Affordable housing needs to definitely be there. I think the most recent conversation we were just having was around whether or not we wanted to make 100% affordable housing units as a highly advantageous criteria, but there are risks in what we put as highly advantageous because it might deter some folks from wanting to bite at the properties. So I would say that the pulse is more towards affordable housing and not market rate housing, which is basically what's going on with One Ferry Street. So yeah, that's my interpretation. There are other people on the committee that might think other things, but to me, it seems like all of the wind is at the back for affordable housing to be considered there.
Okay, I'm going to say another idea. Sorry. Go.
I just have a clarification question. So, Brad, you're on the school reuse committee for Center, Pepin, Maple.
Yep.
Thanks. I was like, what's the other one? All right. And so you're saying that whatever the school is reused for, affordable housing is part of the requirement. Are we selling those buildings? I'm sorry, I'm a little behind.
No, that's okay.
Or is the city going to take them and decide what to do with them?
Well, that's also an option too. So, we're just kind of hashing out what we think would be best for the city right now.
Okay.
And, we have a series of workshops and community feedback. So we had folks from the community kind of weigh what they would like to see happen with the buildings. So, we're kind of addressing those questions right now. So on the table is the idea of the city keeping some of the properties. Like, so let's say they keep the Maple School as an example, and we turn it into public housing that the city owns. That's an idea. Or having someone like Valley CDC, if they were interested, they could buy one of the properties, completely redo everything. So it's still in its formative stage right now, but yeah.
Okay, so all right, so that I guess was kind of my question, was like, so whatever happens, whether it's public, private, somebody coming in, city obtaining, part of what your committee is doing is figuring out what the requirements are for whatever happens.
Yep. Right. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
We're developing the request for proposal criteria, and then that'll go to city council to approve. And then after that, we'll, send out the RFPs to the community. And then based on the applicants, then we'll kind of weight who we think is most advantageous towards the goals that we want for the community. Also, just to draw your attention to the chat box, Jamie just posted the downtown strategic plan. It's kind of a long document, but I would definitely encourage you to check it out because housing is interwoven throughout that whole document.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Thank you for the update, Brad.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So let's see. What do you think about some of the things that were highlighted in the housing production plan that we've talked about that we know are important, knowing our limitations as a city? So not a lot of land, more, there is room for infill development downtown. Like, is that a thing that could be somehow useful in this way to think about with ARPA money? Just throwing it out there.
I think that question that Jana is asking is a really important one. And I hate to say it, but in the sense of like,
Yeah.
if you have to go through the one-stop process, which is the DHCD thing,
Mm-hmm.
all of our creativity is out in a certain way, right? Because like the only people that can do the one-stop process are like low income, places that are like there's expertise in it. So,
Right.
I mean, I think, do you know what I'm saying? Like, I think that's a great idea, but the question is how do we get the money? How would they get the money? I think if the city of Easthampton was distributing it or even some other way, but if they have to go through DHCD and I'm pushed back on me, I think that would be a barrier. Yeah.
That's what's not clear yet, right? Is the
Right.
process. So
Maybe we put it out there and who cares? Yeah.
I think like we can imagine big and come up with a list and then see what happens, just so that we're thinking about stuff. And Shira, just so that you know, DHCD is the Department of Housing and Community Development that controls lots of money. Did you know that one
Already
already?
Googling. No, Googling on this screen over here.
Awesome. Trying to
Fast.
remember to like stop and say
Thank
those
you.
things because
I apologize.
Don't worry.
And they're
No, you're
onerous.
fine. And I'm going to make a little guide for the next person. There's 2 more vacancies, right?
yep.
Well, and you can stop us, but they're also onerous and like no normal human being can ever get money from them. Like you have to really have expertise. Okay. I think it's a good idea, Jackie. I like it. So let's just
Yeah, I think we're just right now we're just generating ideas. We're at that spitballing stage where no idea is stupid.
got it. I like
Right.
it.
So, and we don't know yet what it's going to look like. But if we had our druthers, like what are the things that we would put large chunks of money to? And then if it turns out that like money is coming to the city and the mayor needs some thoughts about where it's going to go, we've already been talking about this, right? So go ahead.
Sorry.
No, you're fine.
So there's the housing production plan that I have skimmed before.
Mm-hmm.
On these pages we're looking at, you're talking about level of complexity or difficulty and who is the primary leadership, who has the primary responsibilities. I'm wondering if it makes sense to look at it from that angle. Like if that would help us narrow down what our priorities are. Like, do we need to look at things that are more global, that are harder, that maybe this is a good time to focus on? I don't know. Maybe that's just a way to navigate.
Yeah. Well, yes, because there's certainly things on this list that we have no control over.
Right.
Mhm.
So I'm going to throw out, just so everyone knows where I'm looking, and this is my own bias, but I think that this goes to two of our priorities. Well, and I'm going to put three. So the advocate for higher inclusion of accessible units and the staying in place. I think that would be a great thing to do, and I think we should put it as a high priority. I think it would also go over really well. There isn't as much money as would be great, as would be helpful to help. And I think we could put this as homeownership or rentals to either help people who have accessibility needs. There are some programs, Jamie, do not, the city is great, but to enhance the available money, either for homeowners to make modifications or landlords to make modifications.
For
And we can just,
accessibility. So Kate, when you say staying in place, are you specifically thinking about folks with disabilities? Or are you thinking about, like we hear a lot of struggles, right, from elderly folks who are on a fixed income who can't make modification or can't update their houses. Is that what you're thinking too?
I'm thinking both. Yeah, I'm saying it broadly to include lots of folks. And if we were going to talk about the elders, then I think we can also talk about taxes.
Which is probably tricky. I hear you, and I know that's what people want, is like, oh, my property taxes are so high, I can't afford them. But with a finite pot of money, I don't know. Say more about what you're thinking.
Well, I'm just thinking, I think there is also a reality. I wouldn't want it necessarily for my taxes, but I think if you're on a fixed income, our taxes have increased, right? And our water has increased. And I think that's a real and legitimate thing. And if you're receiving SSI, it really does make it harder to stay in your home. Let's say we're looking at the elder, but it could be elderly and disabled, is often combined. And so the thinking would be more money to help make modifications. And I'm just really here in the brainstorming, and people can juke this down. So more money for making modifications. Possible, I know there's sometimes like service in lieu of taxes kind of thing. That's really difficult for a lot of elderly and disabled folks. And so, it would be a soft subsidy in the sense of the money is finite, but it might help, particularly for folks to adjust. And then I'm going to throw another one out there that isn't aligned with the DHCD priority, so we should probably not do it. But Northampton's program that they have, which is like Every Neighbor Helps or something like that, it just helps do things for people who wouldn't otherwise be able to stay in their homes. It's a totally volunteer program, but something like that in Easthampton would go towards our advocate for higher inclusion of accessible. Well, not exactly, but something like that. If we're just brainstorming.
Is that the Northampton Neighbors?
That's it. Thank you.
Does Easthampton not have one? Because
not that I'm aware of.
We have an Easthampton Neighbors program.
Yeah.
It's
do?
new, but it's just getting started. It's run through the senior center.
Oh, cool. Okay. Maybe more funding for the the Easthampton Neighbors.
It has a website. I'm just looking at it now.
Because one of the things that Northampton Neighbors sometimes has a problem with is, let's say you do have a neighbor and you need some money to do stuff. So if we're writing down our brainstorms, if we're just putting out our hopes and wishes and dreams.
Like you mean like funding? Like they need, like, I thought it was just like, I'll go pick up your prescriptions or take you to the grocery store or.
Yeah, that's what it is. But like, for example, I had a client who was using Northampton Neighbor and they needed, like, it was, again, not a big repair thing, but something that, I don't know, it was like $50 and they couldn't do it.
Okay. So it's sort of back to the like modification, aging in place kind of it's more like modification supply kind of thing.
Okay, cool. So I feel like this is our wish list much of the time. The things that we haven't really talked about are rental. I mean, sorry, brain and mouth are not connected for a minute. in addition to kind of developing more rental housing, do we want to talk about rental assistance programs like RAFT sort of things? Is that something that we should think about? Especially since we already have this fabulous program that's pandemic relief that Community Action's been running for us.
Which I could provide an update at the end of the meeting because I had to do one for Jamie for tomorrow's CPA meeting. Yeah, I mean, I guess, like, I don't think there's any harm, but I just will say that, like, there's major statewide advocacy groups who like, this is their job, is to advocate for RAFT. And so,
Okay.
and like, so I think we can say, yes, we think it's important, but I also think that, like,
It's already being done.
I think it's already being done.
Yeah.
It's not specific to our region.
I'm going to add another thing in there too, as just like a dream wish list kind of thing. And I'm trying to, like, I don't know, I'm managing between many screens and I like lost our screen for a second. I couldn't get back to us. So I'm frightened to go again. But I don't know if it's in our priorities and it's so teeny. I mean, there is a problem with our old rental housing stock, and Shira, you could probably talk to this. And it's unfortunate, right? Because what ends up happening is that renters who are generally more low income are getting crappier housing. So I wonder if, and our landlord could speak to this, if, and I think I would value this, some kind of program kind of along the aging in place modification, but also some kind of funding, if we're talking about big money, to help fund smaller landlords in rehabbing, rental landlords, in rehabbing their units. Now it's a little more complicated because I don't want to give you money and then have you jack up the rent. I mean, it would have to be a program.
Strings attached, like
Strings
the old housing
attached.
rehab programs we did
Right.
with block grant money.
But we have, I mean, I have a lot of renters, and and some of them are in Easthampton that I work with. And the units are, I mean, they pass inspection, but they're bad. I mean, it's like the only thing that meets FMR, if we can even get anyone in. FMR being, you know, that Tira for the Section 8 folks. So, yeah.
Yeah, I can't rent my right side of my rental property to someone with like Section 8 housing because my hot tub faucet is two separate knobs. So like, so there's stuff like that from a landlord perspective is very tough to navigate because you don't even know these rules until someone comes in for an inspection and you were all set to rent to this lovely lady, and now you can't because you have to do all these updates. So kind of going back to the rental assistance thing, and then Jana, you said, but maybe it's kind of already being done. But what I haven't ever seen is what I believe Kate was just talking about, like assistance for landlords to, or requirements for landlords or help for landlords to be able to rehab their apartments to meet standards, and nicely so. And any sort of like education for landlords on to what these requirements actually are. There's like, as you guys know, there's this huge stigma about Section 8 housing, and it's assumed that anybody coming into Section 8 housing is going to trash the place, so why fix it? But that's really not the case. It's just like, you know, the single mother needs some help. Like, so I would really love to see, or to at least think about seeing, like a destigmatization and more education for local landlords to not be resistant to renting.
I think there's actually three things then on the table in terms of the brainstorm. I think you've got one, and I'm not prioritizing saying we should do this, but I think you've got one idea that would create some kind of, I mean, if we're talking about low income, which I think is aligned with some of the state legislation stuff, you know, we could create some kind of program to educate and incentivize landlords to accept Section 8, and as a separate program or as a sub-program, make repair. I guess it would make more sense as a sub-program, make repairs that are in line with FMR. And then there's another thing, and I think it's a great idea. I love it. But there's another thing too, which is we just have a lot of old housing stock. And I think if we created a program that would somehow make the old housing stock, it would be a rehab program for old housing stock with strings attached. Like for Pine Valley Rental, I think rehabbed in like the 90s, right? And I'm not saying I'd want them, but maybe you get this money and you have to rent it to certain people, but it's, it's money. So I think they're all great, but I think they're two separate yet connected ideas.
Well, and I would say the education piece, like, we could do without money. I mean, I think we have resources available to us in the region. Jackie put in the chat, Mass Fair Housing Center. City of Northampton, I think, does this on a regular basis. They do like a landlord forum. And we've talked about that in the past, actually. So I think that that's actually something that we could do. You bring someone in from Wayfinders or the Easthampton Housing Authority that says, like, here's the stuff that we're looking for. We're going to do an inspection, talk about fair housing. I think the trick is getting landlords who want to come, right? Because if you have a fair housing session for landlords, they don't want to come, right? Because they're afraid they're going to get in trouble. So it's figuring out a way to, like, entice landlords to want to come and learn about these kinds of things.
Well, but if we're going to talk about like what's happening, because I think it's helpful, they're not successful. Like the city of Northampton, and Amherst did it and I attended it. They don't get any bites from it, right? And there's a couple of barriers for it. Number one, and now Northampton and the housing authorities, didn't you read, I think you read the article, someone else mentioned it. They're actually trying to incentivize, like actually give landlords money for taking Section 8 clients. It has to do with the whole, there's like a new Section 8 program for formerly homeless people. And even that's not working so well. So part of it, and again, like I might be going too much and I know I got to hit the road in a sec, but I think money would be helpful, right? Like I think part of the money thing would be you could pair what's already being done with incentives for taking people with vouchers and possibly also, well, I'm just thinking about this right now. I was thinking when you were talking about rental assistance program and draft, I was thinking about soft subsidies. And I'd be like, what's the point of that? You could do a soft subsidy program to get, it violates the rules of Section 8 shit. I was going to say so that you could get our rents are too high.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was thinking that you could subsidize it, but that won't work. So forget it.
No.
You could let landlords know that they would have to go through this kind of training if they want access to rehab money.
Right, something like that. And we could think about it a little bit more, but because there's two problems. It's the education. We could also use some money to incentivize landlords for accepting Section 8. Like that would be a legitimate thing to do because really Northampton they're not giving enough money. It's like a $500 one-time thing. I just wonder if there's some way to incentivize a landlord that would get around the rules of Section 8, but I'd have to think about it a little bit more. Right, because we also have an FMR problem, right? Like most of our rents are just too freaking high. But we can move on. It's
all good things.
I think I'm going to stop sharing because I want to be able to type minutes while we're talking, and it seems like was everyone able to pull up the okay, all of this? Okay, so I will stop sharing for now. I feel like we have a good starting list, so maybe once I put it together as minutes, we can kind of come back to it.
Yeah,
because there's nothing we can apply for right now, but it's good to have the list in our back pocket when we have more thought, when we know more about what's going to happen with money and how it's going to be distributed.
Does anybody know because there are like capacity costs in terms of like the stuff that we want to do. So would the money be able to be used to, let's say, for example, to hire more staff members to work for the Easthampton Housing Authority? Because, you know what I mean? That's the tricky thing. Like one of those line items on there was to, look at building more affordable housing units for the housing authority. But if maybe I'm wrong, but I think there's one employee and an executive director.
Right.
So, without having more employees in place, that's just like a thing that's it's a bandwidth issue. It's just not
Mhm.
feasible. But I don't know if that, I mean, that doesn't seem like something that would be covered. Yeah.
Bet you it won't, but we should probably put it down just because that's what always happens with all of these programs. They never have capacity money. They never have administrative costs. And that's why a lot of places never want to apply. I'm sorry.
All right, folks. So I need to hop over to the city council meeting. I need to like figure out what everybody's doing because I need to start doing it in like 6 weeks.
Yeah, and we're about to lose Kate as well, so.
It's bedtime. Yeah, it's, you know.
All right. So we 7:30. We could adjourn the meeting. Before
Okay.
you hop off, though, I don't remember what we decided about our December meeting. Did we decide we were having a December meeting, which is like right before Christmas? Did we decide we weren't having it? I just don't remember the conversation, and I didn't take the
I
notes.
thought that it was that the reason why we moved it to a Wednesday now was because we weren't going to do the two meetings, you know, because obviously one was on Thanksgiving, and then I think somebody had mentioned just combining November and December together. I feel like I read that somewhere.
Well, I
That
might have put
sounds
it in
right.
the notes, but I can't remember if that's really what we decided or not, which is, if that's fine, if that's what we decided. I just don't remember.
I vote yes because we don't have anything. I vote to just miss December because we don't have anything pressing and it's crazy around the holidays.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I, Jenna, we have a meeting with Lana DeWinters in the beginning of December.
Yep.
And depending on how quickly they want to start and how quickly we want to start moving on things, it might be helpful to have that meeting scheduled and then we can cancel it if we don't actually need to hold it.
Smart thinking, Jamie,
Yep.
always. So is
That's what we have
December
Jamie here
20,
for.
is December
Want to meet
23rd?
on December 23rd, or would, I mean, I don't, but we could if that's what everyone else wants to do. Or we could move it
Do you
again.
want to do it the 16th?
Or the 30th?
I would vote. I'm going to run. I couldn't care less either way, but I get really confused when we change the day. So my vote is if we could just keep it on the Thursday, all of them work for me. But that would just be if possible, just keep it on a Thursday. Because I almost missed this one, not shockingly, but okay. You guys decide. I'll talk to you later. Welcome, Sheila. We're
Kate.
glad to have you.
Is the 16th like another meeting, like the city
Yeah,
council or
I
something?
have CPA meeting at 6:15, so.
The 30th?
I could do that.
Or we
could do
could do
that.
the 9th. Or we could do the 9th.
Or the 9th?
Which is in 2 weeks. No, 3 weeks. Whatever, it's fine. All of those are fine with me.
I'd rather the 9th than the 30th. And then maybe we cancel it because we don't really know anything yet. Or maybe whatever we learned from this meeting with Dana, I can email you.
Okay. That's
All right, so we want the 9th at 6, not 6:30, which was confusing to Brad.
Yeah. It was.
All right, so let's say the 9th at 6, and then I'll keep you posted.
Okay.
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 Before, I feel like there was one other thing I wanted to make sure we talked about before we adjourned, and what the heck was it?
I have a brief update on the rental assistance if you want to hear it, but if everyone has to go, then yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
I do.
So just for Shira's knowledge, so I'm taking off my housing partnership hat, I'm putting on my community action Pioneer Valley hat. We were hired to administer Easthampton's emergency rental assistance program. So I'm going to CPA tomorrow night to give a brief update to the CPA committee meeting. So just as a brief update, we have served 45 households, total of 79 people in those households. We have distributed $125,813.70. That was as of September 30th. We have distributed 3 more grants since then, so it's like a little bit more than that. Other fun facts.
As of October 30th, you mean?
September 30th. so that's the
September,
end
I'm
of,
sorry.
Chaplain.
Gotcha.
Community Actions
This
fiscal
quarter.
year. Yeah.
Yep.
But in October, we distributed 3 more grants, so another 9,000. We have only had 1 denied application. So as you recall, the city really loosened up a lot of the eligibility criteria. So it's actually really hard to get denied. This particular household was over the 100% AMI limit. So they were over income.
Yep.
We've had a couple other withdraws and a couple incompletes since, like, I think there's two withdrawn and 9 incompletes. A lot of those were early on, and we tried to reach out and, gather more information, and folks just moved on. 20% of the folks served were single parents. 20% were non-white residents. 54% were female. 28% were disabled. 10% were 60 or older. 27%.
See, that's what I'm talking about, because everyone hears Section 8 and they just think POC, low income, bad person. Like, and these numbers, like, it's everybody. Like, it's just people who need housing.
Yeah. It's everybody.
Right.
Actually,
And bad person's just not a category that we're going to give up,
Right.
frankly.
Right. It's maddening. I'm sorry. Back to your update. Back to you, Jana.
Of the 45 households, only 5 of them have been subsidized. So the subsidized households had a little bit different criteria. We could only do arrears, whereas if you're unsubsidized, everyone got like a flat $3,000. So we've had 5 subsidized households. The average amount of assistance to those households was $1,162. All the non-subsidized households got the flat $3,000. So it's going well. It has slowed down. So one of the things that I want to talk tomorrow night with CPA, and any feedback you guys have, is just I think we probably want to do another marketing push. We still have like $110,000 left to spend in financial assistance. So we have plenty of money, and probably need to do another push to make sure people know that it's still available. Just in terms of like people's stories for people served, like it's kind of stuff that you would imagine, like people lost their job, they had reduction of hours, they were furloughed. Some folks actually like lost their job early in the pandemic, went back to work, and then like got laid off again when numbers spiked in the fall.
Yeah.
Folks that have basically depleted all of their savings, were able to keep themselves afloat for a while, but then couldn't. And there's been a fair number of households that also needed help with other things. So Community Action has funds that help with utilities. We obviously help people apply for fuel assistance. And so we've had some of the households got multiple sources of funds because they also were behind on their electric bill or their gas bill or needed help, finishing their fuel assistance application. So
Here's my question.
Yeah.
So knowing that going forward, you're trying to give out more money, and knowing that this was intended to be pandemic relief, how does one make someone prove that what's happening as a result of the pandemic, or do we not worry about that?
So we heard loud and clear after we initially launched the program from the mayor and the city council that they did not want Community Action to have an onerous application process. So
Right.
The proof is fairly flexible. This is very similar to how RAFT is being administered. So RAFT is also very flexible. We do have folks sign a statement that says they've had a COVID impact, and the staff are sort of trained to have a conversation about what the various things that could be a COVID impact could be. I would say that a lot of folks it's job related. The notes that I looked through this morning when I was preparing the report are really like pretty standard stuff. But some people had increased in expenses due to kids being home from school or having to, buy additional internet that they didn't have before that they needed.
Right.
People have had, cost of living, costs have been increased. Gas is more expensive, food's more expensive. But a lot of the folks really were, I got furloughed and then I can't catch up, or I lost my job and I got a new job and I'm making half what I was making before. So they really are kind of, it was interesting to read some of the notes from the staff because it was people who went back to work and then got laid off again. And so I think it is still happening. I mean, I think,
Yeah. I guess I just wanted to make sure that there are ways to talk about it.
Yes.
That's all. And one more quick thing. Tomorrow night, Valley CDC is going to CPA as well, right?
No, they're not.
Oh,
They
they're
were
not now?
I
Okay.
I put them on the agenda because I wasn't sure if they were going to submit or in time, and I couldn't remember what they had said, which meeting. So I put them on the agenda so that there wouldn't be a problem. But they're actually haven't submitted their application. They'll be on the December meeting.
So we don't need to be there.
Correct.
Right. Cool.
But December
Okay.
16th is the meeting that if they get the application in.
All right. And you'll give us a heads up, Jamie?
To the best that I can. We're meeting we're meeting now the week before, so. But yeah,
December
Peter
16th.
said that he's aiming for that meeting, so.
Okay. Just because I know myself and I know I'm going to forget unless I get but if you remind us I remembered that it was supposed to be tomorrow. So that's, phew, 1 point for my brain. Not being much. All right.
All right. So if we,
Motion to adjourn.
yes, I second.
Do you need to roll call that one too?
Aye, Jana.
Aye, Jackie.
Hi, Brad.
Hi, Shira.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Am I like
Welcome to the
sworn in?
club. Your first motion vote.
Wicked.
All right. It is 7:40 and we are adjourned.